thought I heard an echo at first, some distant splash from across Echo Lake's still waters. But then it came again, a high, terrified yelp, followed by something heavy hitting the surface. Through the morning mist, I spotted the pickup truck speeding away, dust billowing behind it. Then I saw him, a tiny black and tan bundle thrashing in the water, his head barely visible as waves pushed him further from shore. "Max!" I screamed, though he wasn't mine to name yet. 7-year-old legs aren't built for heroics. But mine carried me anyway, straight into the water with my sundress still on. The lake bottom dropped away too quickly, and I wasn't a strong swimmer not since Daddy had stopped teaching me. But that puppy's desperate eyes found mine across the water, and something inside me wouldn't let him go. What we pulled from that lake wasn't just a drowning German Shepherd puppy. It was evidence of something much worse happening in our quiet town, something that would change everything. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Echo Lake used to be a place of postcards and summer memories, but for the Hudson family, it represented a desperate attempt at a new beginning. The small, weathered cabin with its creaking dock had been a spontaneous purchase after the accident. A place to heal, Amanda Hudson had told her daughter, though the furrow between her brows suggested she wasn't convinced herself. Lily Hudson hadn't spoken much since they'd scattered her father's ashes 3 months ago. 7 years old, with a constellation of freckles across her nose and auburn hair that tumbled in perpetual tangles, she spent most days by the water's edge, collecting stones and avoiding the concerned glances of her mother. The lake seemed to understand her grief in ways the grief counselor's cheerful office never could. Amanda worked the night shift at Echo Lake Regional Hospital, her nursing scrubs often still on as she made Lily breakfast before collapsing into her own exhausted sleep. At 34, she looked older now. The premature lines around her eyes deepened by loss and worry. The move had been financial as much as emotional, their savings depleted by funeral costs and the sudden burden of a single-income household. Their closest neighbor, Walter Thornton, made no effort to welcome them. The 68-year-old Vietnam veteran lived in a meticulously maintained cabin a quarter-mile down the shore, his property line marked with hand-painted no trespassing signs. Local gossip described him as mean as a rattlesnake and twice as likely to strike. But Lily had noticed how gently he tended to the wild birds that gathered on his dock each morning. The town itself was small enough that newcomers remained newcomers for at least a generation. Sheriff Mike Donovan had tipped his hat politely when they arrived, but warned them about keeping to themselves during their first summer. The local veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Bennett, ran the only animal clinic within 30 miles, a converted gas station with peeling paint and state-of-the-art equipment that seemed oddly out of place. Into this fragile new world came Max, though he wasn't Max yet. Just a half-drowned puppy with ribs like piano keys beneath matted fur and eyes that seemed to understand more than any animal should. He would become the unlikely bridge between broken people, the silent witness to secrets Echo Lake had kept buried beneath its placid surface for years. The water was colder than it looked, stealing Lily's breath as she pushed forward. Her mother's warnings about the lake's unpredictable depths echoed distantly in her mind. But the puppy's struggles were growing weaker with each passing second. 20 feet from shore, her toes no longer touched bottom. "I'm coming," she called, her voice thin against the vastness of the morning. The German Shepherd puppy's eyes locked on hers, intelligent, desperate, pleading. His small head dipped beneath the surface, then resurfaced with a frantic splash. Lily kicked harder, her sundress billowing around her like a jellyfish, weighing her down. The distance between them seemed impossible. But something in those brown eyes wouldn't let her turn back. From the shore came a shout. "Lily Hudson!" What in God's name? Amanda's voice, sharp with panic. Then a splash. Her mother was coming too. But Lily reached the puppy first, her small hands finding wet fur just as he began to sink again. He was heavier than she expected, and the moment she touched him, they both went under. Beneath the surface, the world went silent and green. The puppy's legs kicked against her chest, his panic making rescue nearly impossible. Then strong arms wrapped around them both. Amanda had reached them, her nurse's strength evident as she kept both child and animal afloat. "I've got you, baby. I've got you both." Together, they struggled toward shore, the puppy now limp between them. When Lily's feet finally found purchase on the muddy bottom, she stumbled forward, collapsing on the pebbly beach with the German shepherd cradled against her chest. His eyes were closed, his small body trembling violently. "He's not moving right. Mama," Lily whispered, her voice cracking. It was the most she'd spoken in weeks. Amanda knelt beside them, her soaked scrubs clinging to her frame. With practiced hands, she tilted the puppy's head, checking his airway. Water dribbled from his mouth, and then, miraculously, his chest expanded with a ragged breath. "He's breathing," Amanda confirmed, already stripping off her wet outer shirt to wrap around the shivering animal. "But he needs help, Lily. Professional help." As if summoned by the urgency, a figure appeared on the path behind them. Walter Thornton, his weathered face unreadable beneath his fishing hat. "Heard the commotion," he said gruffly. "What's all this about?" Amanda explained quickly as she gathered the puppy closer. "Someone threw him in. We need to get him to Dr. Bennett's clinic." Walter's eyes narrowed as he studied the small bundle. Without another word, he turned and strode toward his truck parked up on the road. "Well, come on then," he called over his shoulder. "Ain't got all day to stand around sopping wet." The veterinary clinic was a 20-minute drive that Amanda and Lily spent in the back of Walter's pickup, huddled over the puppy's still form. Occasionally, his eyes would flutter open, confused, pain-filled before closing again. Up close, Lily could see the cruel evidence of neglect: patches of missing fur, a raw ring around his neck where something tight had rubbed away skin, and most disturbing, strange notches in one ear that looked deliberately made. Dr. Sarah Bennett met them at the door, her blonde hair hastily pulled back, eyes sharp with assessment. "Bring him straight back," she instructed, leading them past the empty waiting room to an examination area that smelled of antiseptic and fear. Under the bright lights, the puppy looked even worse. Dr. Bennett worked methodically, checking vital signs, administering oxygen, inserting an IV line into one thin leg with practiced precision. "He's been in that water too long," she murmured. "And that's not all that's wrong here." Her gloved fingers probed gently along the puppy's body, cataloging injuries both fresh and old. Malnutrition, rope burns, possible internal bleeding. She paused at the ear with the strange markings. "And this is a breeder's mark. Crude, but specific." "Will he make it?" Lily asked, her voice small in the clinical space. Dr. Bennett looked at the child for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. The next 48 hours will tell. He's young, maybe 4 months, which works in his favor, but someone's done their level best to break him. From the doorway, Walter cleared his throat. "Seen this before," he said, nodding toward the puppy. "Back in Nam, we had dogs, German shepherds mostly. Good ones got treated right. The ones that wouldn't train like they wanted." He didn't finish the thought. Amanda placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder, but the girl was focused entirely on the small creature fighting for life on the metal table. She reached out one finger to touch his paw. To everyone's surprise, the puppy's toes curled slightly around it. "He's a fighter," Dr. Bennett said softly. "That's something, at least." As they settled in to wait, none of them noticed the mud-spattered pickup truck that slowed as it passed the clinic, or the driver who watched them with narrowed eyes before continuing down the road toward the lake. The old boathouse stood at the edge of the Hudson property, its weathered boards silvered by years of sun and rain. Amanda had declared it off-limits when they first moved in. "Too many rotten planks. Lily, it's not safe." But on the third morning after Max's rescue, while her mother caught precious sleep between shifts, Lily found herself drawn to its shadowy interior. The puppy was still at Dr. Bennett's clinic, fighting his own battle against infection and exhaustion. Dr. Bennett had called it touch and go, in that careful adult voice that meant things were worse than she was saying. The waiting had become unbearable. Inside the boathouse, dust motes danced in shafts of light that penetrated through gaps in the walls. The air smelled of lake water and old wood, with an underlying mustiness that tickled Lily's nose. She moved carefully across the creaking floor, touching the abandoned fishing rods and tackle boxes left by previous owners. In the corner lay an old rowboat, its blue paint peeling away in curled strips. Something about it caught her attention, a flash of color beneath the bench seat. Lily crouched down, her small fingers reaching into the shadow. What she pulled out made her heart stutter, a dog collar. Faded red nylon with a tarnished tag still attached. The name Buddy was barely legible beneath a layer of grime. Frowning, Lily reached deeper and found another collar, then another, 5 in total, different sizes and colors, but all with the same greenish residue along their edges. "What are you doing in here? Little miss?" Lily jumped, the collars scattering across the wooden planks. Walter Thornton stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light, face unreadable beneath his ever-present fishing hat. I found these," she stammered, pointing to the collars. To her surprise, Walter didn't scold her for trespassing. Instead, he knelt with a grunt of effort and picked up the red collar, turning it over in his weathered hands. Was all he said, but his expression darkened. "You should tell Sheriff Donovan about this." Sheriff Mike Donovan arrived that afternoon, his patrol car kicking up dust as it wound down the narrow lane to their cabin. Lily watched from the porch steps as he examined the collars, his face growing more serious with each one. "This makes 6 in the past year," he finally said, glancing at Amanda. 6 dogs gone missing around Echo Lake. Folks figured they'd just run off or got taken by coyotes. 6, Amanda echoed, her arm instinctively curling around Lily's shoulders. "That we know of." The sheriff bagged the collars carefully. Started last summer. Family dog disappears. Folks put up flyers. Nothing comes of it. Then another, and another. He looked toward the lake, its surface glittering innocently in the afternoon sun. Never found any bodies. Though, not till now. Max isn't dead, Lily said fiercely. It was the first time she'd named the puppy aloud. Sheriff Donovan's expression softened. No, he's not. And that might be our first real lead. He tipped his hat as he turned to leave. You folks be careful. Keep your doors locked at night. The warning seemed excessive in the bright daylight, but by evening, its wisdom became clear. Amanda found the note while bringing in the laundry, a piece of paper folded and stuck beneath their welcome mat. The message, cut from magazine letters and pasted in a crooked line, was simple but chilling. Mind your own business or lose more than a dog. Amanda called the sheriff immediately, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Lily listened from the hallway, catching fragments about threatening notes and police protection. When the call ended, her mother sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. Are we in danger, Mama? Lily finally asked. Amanda looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten her daughter was there. No, baby, just some foolishness. The smile she attempted didn't reach her eyes. Sheriff Donovan's going to drive by more often. That's all. That night, Amanda pushed the dresser in front of the door and checked the windows twice before bed. Lily lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and groans of their cabin. Suddenly, sinister in the darkness, just as she was finally drifting off, a sound jerked her fully awake. A soft, urgent scratch at the front door. Heart pounding. She slipped from bed and padded to her mother's room. Mama, she whispered, shaking Amanda's shoulder. There's something outside. Together they crept to the living room window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peer into the yard. The porch light illuminated a small, familiar shape, impossibly, unbelievably familiar. Max! Lily gasped. The German shepherd puppy sat on their welcome mat, thin and trembling, with bandages still wrapped around one leg and his chest. As they watched, he pawed weakly at the door again, then turned his head to look back toward the road, ears pricked in alert. Amanda unlocked the door, and Max limped inside, whining softly. Behind him, headlights swept across the trees as a vehicle slowed on the road before continuing past. The puppy pressed against Lily's legs, his whole body shaking. How did he get here? Lily whispered, kneeling to stroke his head. Dr. Bennett's clinic is miles away. Amanda was already dialing the phone. Sarah, it's Amanda Hudson. Yes, I know what time. She paused, listening. He's here, at our house. No, I have no idea how. The conversation that followed revealed that the clinic had been broken into. The back door forced open. Only Max was missing from the kennels. Someone took him, Lily asked when her mother hung up. But why would they bring him here? Amanda had no answer, but Walter Thornton did. The old man appeared at their door before dawn, as if he'd been watching the cabin all night. He studied Max, who had finally fallen asleep on Lily's lap after refusing food and water. He wasn't stolen to be returned to you, Walter said bluntly. He was stolen to be followed. Whoever took him wanted to know where he'd go. He pointed to a small object partially hidden in the bandages around Max's neck, a tiny black disc no bigger than a button. Tracking device, military grade, or something like it. With careful fingers, Walter removed the device and crushed it beneath his boot heel. Someone's mighty interested in who's helping this little guy. His eyes met Amanda's over Lily's head. And now they know exactly where you live. Recovery came in small, precious increments. Each morning, Lily would rush to the makeshift bed they'd created for Max in the living room, a laundry basket lined with her softest blankets, half expecting to find it empty. But the puppy remained, his eyes tracking her movements with an alertness that seemed to deepen daily. Dr. Bennett visited every afternoon, bringing supplies and checking Max's wounds with gentle hands. "I've never seen anything like it," she confessed on the fourth day, watching Max take wobbly steps across the living room floor. By all rights, he shouldn't be able to stand yet. The physical signs of abuse were healing, the rope burns around his neck fading to pink scars, the notched ear scabbing over, his ribs less prominent as he began to accept small meals. But other wounds ran deeper. Max would freeze at sudden movements, his entire body going rigid with fear. The sound of engines on the road would send him scrambling for cover. Water, even in his drinking bowl, seemed to trigger tremors throughout his small frame. Yet for all his trauma, Max showed flashes of extraordinary intelligence and resilience. By the end of the first week, he had learned to sit on command and would bring Lily her shoes each morning. He slept pressed against her bedroom door, as if standing guard, and seemed to sense Amanda's return from night shifts before her car even turned into the driveway. "That dog's got something special," Walter observed from the porch rocker that had somehow become his designated spot over the past week. The old man now spent most afternoons at the Hudson cabin, his shotgun propped against the wall beside him. When Amanda had questioned this self-appointed guardianship, he'd simply shrugged. "Ain't got much else to do these days." On this particular afternoon, Walter watched as Lily attempted to teach Max to shake hands. The puppy cocked his head, studying her demonstration before deliberately placing his paw in her outstretched palm. "German shepherds were bred for intelligence," Walter continued, his voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting remembered knowledge. "Working dogs, problem solvers. But this one—" He trailed off, frowning. "This one what?" Amanda asked, setting a glass of lemonade beside him. Walter accepted the drink with a nod of thanks. "This one's been trained, or at least someone started training him before." He gestured vaguely. "Before whatever happened to him happened." Inside, the phone rang. Amanda excused herself to answer it, returning moments later with a furrow between her brows. "That was Sarah Bennett," she said quietly, ensuring Lily was out of earshot. "She's been looking into that mark on Max's ear. Says it matches ones she's seen on puppies from high-end breeding operations, pure bloodlines, special training." She lowered her voice further. "The kind that sell for thousands to the right buyers." Walter's face darkened. "And the wrong ones?" Amanda looked away. "She says there's a market for dogs that wash out of training. Research labs. Fighting rings." She couldn't finish. "But Max got away somehow," Walter murmured, watching the puppy execute a perfect sit-stay for Lily. Smart little feller. That evening, as Lily helped dry dishes after dinner, she made an announcement. "Max needs to meet Cassie," she declared. "She lives down the road and she's 9. Her dog went missing too." Amanda nearly dropped the plate she was washing. "Cassie Williams, from the blue house with the tire swing." Lily nodded. "Her dog was named Pepper. He was black with white feet. She told me at the bus stop yesterday." This was news on multiple fronts, not just another missing dog, but the fact that Lily had spoken to someone at the bus stop. Since David's death, Lily had withdrawn from other children entirely. Amanda tried to keep her voice casual. "Did Cassie say when Pepper disappeared 3 weeks ago, they put up flyers everywhere?" Lily placed a dried cup in the cabinet. "She said her dad thinks Thomas Harrison took him." Thomas Harrison. The name was familiar. A prominent local businessman whose sprawling property bordered the lake on its northern shore. Why would he say that? Lily shrugged. "Because Mr. Harrison has lots of dogs that bark at night, but nobody ever sees them during the day." The next afternoon, Amanda drove Lily and Max to the Williams house. Cassie, a gangly girl with dark braids and a missing front tooth, was waiting on the porch steps. At the sight of Max, her eyes widened. "You really did find a puppy in the lake," she breathed, approaching slowly with her hand extended for Max to sniff. The two girls settled in the grass with Max between them, while Amanda spoke with Cassie's mother, Susan. The conversation quickly confirmed what Lily had reported. Pepper had vanished from their fenced backyard 3 weeks earlier. "Jeff, that's my husband. He did go talk to Harrison," Susan admitted, lowering her voice. "That man's property backs up to the woods behind our place, and Jeff's heard dogs over there at all hours. But Harrison just laughed him off, said Jeff was welcome to search the grounds if he was so concerned." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Jeff didn't go. Harrison's got those security men always hanging around." Amanda's nursing instincts kicked in, the same ones that helped her spot inconsistencies in patient stories. "Has anyone else had pets go missing around here?" Susan nodded slowly. "The Millers lost their retriever last fall. The Patel's shepherd mix disappeared in February. Old Mrs. Conway's terriers, both of them gone one morning in April." She sighed. "Everyone just assumed coyotes or them running off, but now I wonder." As they prepared to leave, Cassie pressed something into Lily's hand, a small photo of a black dog with distinctive white paws. "In case you see Pepper," she whispered. "He's really friendly and likes cheese." Max sniffed the photo intently, then looked up at Cassie with an expression so understanding that the older girl's eyes filled with tears. The investigation deepened as summer heat settled over Echo Lake. Sheriff Donovan compiled a list of missing pets that now numbered 11 over the past year, all medium to large breeds, all from homes within a 5-mile radius of the lake. He increased patrols but admitted privately to Amanda that without hard evidence, his hands were largely tied. "Town council doesn't see missing dogs as a priority," he explained, standing in their kitchen while Lily and Max played in the yard under Walter's watchful eye, especially with Harrison breathing down their necks about that new development he wants to build. "Harrison again," Amanda murmured. Thinking of Susan Williams' comments, the sheriff's expression turned cautious. "Now, I'm not saying anything official, but you might want to keep your distance from Thomas Harrison. Man's got powerful friends up in the county seat." That evening, Walter arrived with an unexpected guest, Dr. Bennett, carrying not her usual medical bag but a large manila envelope. Her normally composed demeanor seemed frayed at the edges, her movements jerky as she spread photographs across the kitchen table. "I've been running tests on samples from Max," she explained, pointing to chemical formulas that meant nothing to Amanda. "This is a specialized compound, a derivative of phenobarbital mixed with other substances. It's used in breeding operations to make aggressive dogs more manageable during transport." "You're saying Max was drugged?" Amanda asked, keeping her voice low. Sarah nodded grimly. "And not with anything you can get at a regular vet's office." "This is custom-made, expensive." She shuffled through more papers. "I've seen it before. Years ago when I worked at a research facility upstate. It was used on dogs being prepared for testing." "Testing?" Amanda repeated, the word sour in her mouth. "Pharmaceutical trials, mostly." Sarah wouldn't meet her eyes. "The kind that don't get publicized." Walter, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "You saying our Max here was headed for some lab before he ended up in the lake?" "I'm saying it's a possibility." Sarah finally looked up. "And if I'm right, someone is going to a lot of trouble to cover their tracks." As if on cue, Max appeared in the doorway, Lily close behind. The puppy froze at the sight of the gathered adults, his ears perking forward. "He knows we're talking about him," Lily said matter-of-factly. "He always knows." 2 days later, the town hall hosted a community meeting about recent concerns regarding animal welfare. Amanda left Lily with Walter at the cabin and joined nearly 60 other residents in the stuffy meeting room. Sheriff Donovan stood at the front beside Mayor Collins, a thin woman with permanent frown lines. "Now, I know there's been talk about missing pets," the mayor began, her voice carrying a practiced political smoothness. "Sheriff Donovan is looking into these reports, but we want to caution against speculation and rumor-mongering." From the back of the room, a man stood, Jeff Williams, Cassie's father, his face flushed with anger. "It's not speculation when 11 dogs go missing in less than a year," he called out. "Something's happening, and nobody's doing anything about it." "We're following procedure," Sheriff Donovan replied, though Amanda noted he looked uncomfortable. "Without evidence." "What about the puppy they found in the lake?" another voice called. "Somebody tried to drown that dog." The meeting devolved quickly after that, with accusations flying and tensions rising. Amanda noticed Thomas Harrison sitting in the front row, his expensive suit out of place among the casual clothes of most Echo Lake residents. He remained silent throughout, but occasionally whispered to the broad-shouldered man beside him, one of the security personnel Susan had mentioned. As the meeting broke up without resolution, Harrison approached Amanda in the parking lot. Up close, he was older than she'd expected, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair and the overly tanned skin of someone who spent winters in warmer climates. "Mrs. Hudson, isn't it?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you're the one who rescued that poor animal from the lake." "Admirable." Amanda nodded cautiously. "My daughter, actually. She saw it happen." "Ah, children. So observant." His gaze sharpened. "I'd love to stop by sometime, see how the little fellow is doing. I'm something of a dog lover myself, German shepherds in particular." Before Amanda could respond, Walter materialized at her side, having apparently followed her to the meeting despite promising to stay with Lily. "Evening. Harrison," he said, his voice carrying a hard edge Amanda hadn't heard before. "Don't recall you ever showing interest in strays before." Harrison's smile tightened. "Walter Thornton. Still poking your nose where it doesn't belong?" "I see." He turned back to Amanda. "Just a friendly offer. Think about it." With a nod, he returned to his waiting SUV, the security man holding the door open. "You know him?" Amanda asked as they walked to her car. Walter spat on the ground. "From way back. He used to supply dogs for military contracts when I was handling K-9 units. Never did like his methods." He glanced at Amanda. "Left Lily with Sarah Bennett. She showed up right after you left, said she had more information." The more information turned out to be records Sarah had pulled from her previous employment documentation of animal purchases from a supplier with connections to Echo Lake. The name on the paperwork wasn't Harrison's, but rather a shell company that Sarah had traced back to property owned by his family. "It's not proof," she admitted, "but it's a pattern. Purebred puppies with promising characteristics were purchased for the research program, ones that didn't meet standards." She trailed off, looking at Max, who had fallen asleep with his head on Lily's lap. "Were disposed of," Walter finished flatly. The next morning, Amanda woke to find Lily's bed empty. Panic seized her until she heard soft voices from the porch. She found her daughter sitting on the steps in her pajamas, talking earnestly to Max while the puppy watched her with complete attention. "And then we'll find Pepper and all the others," Lily was saying. "And the bad people will go to jail." "Planning a rescue mission?" Amanda asked lightly, settling beside them. Lily nodded, her face serious in the early light. "Max knows where they are," she said confidently. "He gets scared when we walk toward Mr. Harrison's side of the lake." Amanda started to explain why they couldn't simply accuse someone based on a dog's reaction, when Max suddenly stiffened. His ears pricked forward, and a low growl rumbled in his chest, the first aggressive sound they'd heard from him. Following his gaze, Amanda spotted a dark sedan moving slowly past their driveway, though she couldn't see the driver clearly. The car's deliberate pace and tinted windows sent a chill through her. Max's reaction to the car confirmed what Amanda had begun to suspect: the puppy's trauma wasn't random. He recognized threats, specific ones. His intelligence wasn't just remarkable, it was cultivated. Someone had invested time in his training before deciding he was expendable. That afternoon, Sarah Bennett arrived with news that shifted the investigation dramatically. She'd consulted with a former colleague at the State University's veterinary program about the mark on Max's ear. "It's a designation system," she explained, showing them magnified photos. "This notch pattern indicates bloodline and training aptitude. See these 3 marks? They show he was initially tagged for advanced scent training." She pointed to another mark. "But this one's different, added later. Probably it's what they use to mark washouts." "Washouts," Lily echoed, her arms protectively around Max. Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Dogs that don't respond to training as expected, maybe too independent, too gentle, or—" She paused. "Too smart in the wrong ways." Walter nodded slowly. "Had a dog like that in Nam. Wouldn't attack on command, didn't have the aggression they wanted, but Lord, He could find hidden traps better than any equipment we had. And his weathered face softened with the memory. Saved my life 3 times before they reassigned him. What happened to him? Lily asked. The old man's eyes clouded. Don't rightly know. They said he was going to another unit, but I never believed it. That night, as a summer storm gathered over the lake, Amanda sat on the porch long after Lily had gone to bed. Max lay at her feet, his head on his paws, but his eyes alert, watching the darkness beyond the yard light's reach. "What are we going to do?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. "How do we protect you and Lily from people like Harrison?" Max's ears twitched at Harrison's name. He rose to his feet, moving to the edge of the porch steps, his posture suddenly alert. A low whine escaped him, not fearful, but urgent. Amanda peered into the darkness. At first, she saw nothing. Then, a flicker of movement near the tree line, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows of the woods. Heart pounding, she reached for the porch light switch, ready to call for Walter, when Max did something unexpected. He wagged his tail. The shadow resolved into a dog larger than Max, its dark coat making it nearly invisible against the night. It approached cautiously, limping slightly, ribs clearly visible, even in the dim light. Around its neck was a frayed collar with a flash of white paws, black fur. "Pepper," Amanda whispered incredulously. The dog froze at the sound of its name, then took another hesitant step forward. Max whined again, pawing at the steps as if asking permission. When Amanda nodded numbly, he bounded down to meet the newcomer, touching noses in silent canine communication. As the 2 dogs circled each other on the lawn, Amanda realized what she was witnessing wasn't just an extraordinary coincidence. It was evidence, and perhaps the key to unraveling what was happening in Echo Lake. The morning Max disappeared started like any other. Lily had fed him breakfast, the special mix Dr. Bennett had prepared to help him gain weight, and taken him for his careful morning walk around the cabin perimeter. Walter had arrived with fresh lake fish and his ever-present shotgun, settling into his porch rocker while Amanda prepared for a rare day shift at the hospital. "I'll be back by 6, she told Lily, kneeling to straighten her daughter's t-shirt collar. "Mind Walter. Stay where he can see you. And remember, no going near the North Shore," Lily finished. The rule now firmly established after Pepper's miraculous appearance 3 days earlier. The older dog had been taken to Dr. Bennett's clinic, where he was recovering from malnutrition and infected paw pads. The Williams family had been overjoyed, though Jeff Williams' face had darkened with rage when he saw the condition of his daughter's pet. "Harrison's going to pay for this," he'd vowed, while Sheriff Donovan cautioned patience until they had concrete evidence. Amanda kissed Lily's forehead and headed for her car, pausing to scratch Max behind his ears. The puppy had grown noticeably in the 2 weeks since his rescue. His coat shinier, his eyes brighter. He leaned against her leg briefly, a silent exchange of affection, before trotting back to Lily's side. It was the last time she would see him that day. The call came at 2:17 p.m., Walter's gruff voice tight with restrained panic. "Max is gone. 1 minute he was playing with Lily in the yard, next minute vanished. Been searching for an hour. No trace." Amanda abandoned her patient mid-assessment, mumbling apologies to the startled doctor as she ran for the parking lot. The drive home was a blur of speed and dread, her mind cycling through terrible possibilities. Had Harrison's men taken him? Had he simply wandered off? Or worse, had someone finished what they'd started at the lake? She found Lily sitting rigid on the porch steps, her small face streaked with tears, but set in stubborn determination. Walter paced the yard, examining the ground with the intensity of a man reading vital signs. "He went that way," Lily said immediately, pointing toward the trees that separated their property from the neighboring shoreline. "He was playing with his rope toy, and then he just stopped and looked toward the woods. His ears did the pointy thing they do when he hears something important." "Did you hear anything?" Amanda asked, dropping to her knees beside her daughter. Lily shook her head. "But he did. He dropped his toy and just stared. Then he ran." Walter rejoined them, his weathered face grave. "Found tracks heading north through the brush. Small dog Max's size, moving fast. No signs of struggle or other people." He glanced toward the darkening sky. "Storm's coming. If we're going to find him before it hits, we need to move now." Sheriff Donovan arrived minutes later, bringing 2 deputies and equipment for a search. "Got the call from your neighbor, Mrs. Davis," he explained. "Said she saw some commotion at your place." The search party organized quickly, spreading out along the lake shore and into the woods, calling Max's name. Lily insisted on joining despite Amanda's protests, her voice hoarse with emotion as she called for her puppy. An hour passed with no sign, then another. The first fat raindrops began to fall as thunder rumbled in the distance. "We should get the child inside," one deputy suggested, eyeing the approaching storm. "No." Lily's voice cracked like the thunder overhead. "He's afraid of storms. He needs me." As if in answer, a distant bark echoed through the trees, faint but unmistakable. "That's him." Lily broke away from the group, darting into the underbrush with surprising speed. "Lily, wait!" Amanda called, chasing after her, branches whipping at her face as she followed her daughter's small form through the thickening woods. The path Lily followed wasn't random. Max's barking grew louder, more urgent, guiding them through the tangled forest until the trees began to thin. Ahead, partially hidden by landscaped shrubbery, rose the imposing stone wall that marked Thomas Harrison's property. Sheriff Donovan caught up to them, breathing heavily. "We can't go any further," he warned. "That's private property, and Harrison's security doesn't mess around." But Lily was already scaling a fallen tree that leaned against the wall, providing an unintended bridge. "Max is in there," she said with absolute certainty, her voice carrying the same uncompromising tone that her father had used when his mind was made up. Amanda looked between the wall and her daughter, fear warring with maternal instinct. Max's barking had taken on a frantic quality, punctuated now by another dog's deeper voice, possibly Pepper's. "Listen to me," Walter said, materializing beside them like a ghost. "There's another way. Service entrance on the east side, less guarded, used by the groundskeepers." When Amanda stared at him questioningly, he added, "Been watching this place for months, ever since my ranger went missing last winter." "Your dog?" Sheriff Donovan asked. Walter nodded grimly. "German Shepherd, 10 years old. Harrison offered to buy him 3 times, said he admired his breeding. When I refused, Ranger disappeared a week later." The revelation hung in the rain-heavy air for a moment before Sheriff Donovan made his decision. East entrance, then. But we do this by the book, no vigilante nonsense. He eyed Walter's shotgun meaningfully. The small group circled the massive property, guided by Walter's surprisingly detailed knowledge of Harrison's security patterns. The service entrance, a metal gate set into the stone wall, was padlocked but unguarded. "Stand back," Donovan ordered, producing bolt cutters from his vehicle. The lock gave way with a decisive snap, and they slipped onto the manicured grounds of Harrison's estate. The landscaped gardens of the front property yielded to more utilitarian spaces as they moved toward the rear, a greenhouse, a maintenance shed, and finally a long, low building partially hidden by pine trees. No windows broke its concrete facade, but a heavy metal door stood at one end, secured by an electronic keypad, and tied to a post near that door, soaking wet and shivering, was Max. "Max," Lily cried, running forward before anyone could stop her. The puppy's head jerked up at her voice, his entire body quivering with recognition and relief. He strained against the heavy chain securing him, whimpering as Lily fell to her knees beside him, small fingers working frantically at the padlocked collar. "We need the key," she sobbed, looking back at the adults. Sheriff Donovan approached cautiously, his hand on his service weapon as he scanned the area. "Something's not right. Why leave him out here like this?" Walter's expression darkened with sudden understanding. "Because he's bait," he said flatly. "They knew we'd come for him." As if summoned by the words, the door to the concrete building swung open. Thomas Harrison stepped out, flanked by two security men in dark rain gear. His expression registered mild surprise at the sight of Sheriff Donovan, but quickly smoothed into practiced affability. "Sheriff, this is unexpected. I see you found a trespasser on my property." He gestured toward Max with well-manicured fingers. "That animal wandered in earlier today. My security team was about to call animal control." "That's a lie." Lily's voice rang out, her arms protectively around Max's wet body. "You stole him. You stole all the dogs." Harrison's smile didn't waver, but something cold entered his eyes. "Children and their imaginations. Charming, but hardly the basis for trespassing on private property." He turned to Sheriff Donovan. "I'll overlook this intrusion as a misunderstanding, but I must insist you remove these people immediately." Donovan's weathered face revealed nothing as he studied Harrison. "We've had reports of missing dogs in the area. Mr. Harrison, 11 at last count. And now we find this puppy previously rescued after someone attempted to drown him, chained outside your facility." He gestured toward the windowless building. "Mind telling me what's inside?" "My private kennels," Harrison replied smoothly. "I breed German Shepherds championship lines. Very exclusive, very valuable. Hence the security." He spread his hands in a gesture of openness. "You're welcome to see for yourself, with a proper warrant." The standoff might have continued if not for what happened next. From inside the building came a chorus of barking, not the excited greeting of well-kept show dogs, but the desperate, frantic sounds of animals in distress. "Sounds like your champions need attention," Walter observed coldly. Harrison's facade cracked slightly. "My dogs are well cared for. What you're hearing is simply His explanation was cut short by a new sound from within, a dog howling in pain, followed by a man's irritated shout. Max responded instantly, his own howl rising in answer, the sound chilling in its human-like anguish. Something shifted in Sheriff Donovan's stance. "Mr. Harrison, I believe I have reasonable cause to suspect animal cruelty is taking place on your property." His hand moved to his radio. "I'm calling for backup and requesting permission to conduct a welfare check on the animals inside." Harrison's pleasant mask vanished entirely. "This is private property, Sheriff. You have no jurisdiction here without—" "Actually, he does." Amanda interrupted, stepping forward with her phone extended. On the screen was a video, shaky but clear enough, showing Max being dragged into a vehicle by one of the security men now standing beside Harrison. "My neighbor, Mrs. Davis, caught this on her security camera this morning. That's abduction of property at minimum, theft at worst." For a moment, no one moved. Rain poured down, plastering hair to scalps and turning the manicured ground to mud. Then Harrison made a slight motion with his hand, and the security men reached inside their jackets. "I wouldn't," Walter said quietly, his shotgun appearing from beneath his rain poncho. "Been waiting a long time for this moment. Thomas, don't make it uglier than it needs to be." Whether it was Walter's weapon or the sound of approaching sirens that decided matters, Harrison's shoulders sagged in defeat. "This is a misunderstanding," he insisted, but the conviction had left his voice. When the additional deputies arrived, Sheriff Donovan led them to the metal door, which Harrison reluctantly unlocked with a code. The stench that emerged was immediate and overwhelming: urine, feces, and the sour smell of fear. Inside, the private kennels revealed their true nature. Cages lined the walls, stacked too high in some places, each containing a dog. German shepherds predominated, but other breeds were present too: a golden retriever missing patches of fur, a border collie so thin its skull seemed to protrude through its skin, and in the furthest cage, an older German shepherd with a graying muzzle that began barking frantically at the sight of Walter. "Ranger," the old man breathed, moving toward the cage with shaking hands. In total, 17 dogs were found in the facility, along with documentation that painted a damning picture. Harrison hadn't just been breeding dogs, he'd been running an operation that supplied animals to research facilities and private security firms. Dogs that failed their assessments or became too old were disposed of rather than retired or rehomed. The lake, Amanda realized aloud, watching as officers photographed the evidence. That's where they got rid of them. Harrison and his security team were taken into custody as rain continued to pour down, turning the scene into something from a nightmare: uniformed officers leading handcuffed men to vehicles, flashlights cutting through the gloom, the constant sound of barking as veterinary services arrived to assess the rescued animals. Through it all, Lily sat on the wet ground with Max pressed against her side, his chain finally removed, both of them watching with solemn eyes as the truth of Echo Lake was finally dragged into the light. "You did it," Amanda whispered, kneeling beside her daughter as the storm began to ease. "You and Max, you found them?" Lily looked up, her face streaked with rain and tears, but somehow older, wiser. "He knew all along where they were," she said simply. "He was just waiting until he was strong enough to show us." As if understanding her words, Max pressed closer to the child who had saved him from the lake, his dark eyes reflecting a depth of comprehension that transcended mere animal instinct. In that moment, Amanda glimpsed what had made this particular puppy so dangerous to Harrison's operation, not his pedigree or his physical abilities, but his uncanny intelligence and unbreakable spirit. A spirit that had survived attempted drowning, abuse, and now had brought down an entire criminal enterprise, all because a 7-year-old girl had refused to look away when something terrible happened at the lake. The victory was short-lived. As they were preparing to leave Harrison's property, Max collapsed. One moment he was trotting beside Lily, seemingly energized by the rescue operation. The next, his legs simply gave way, his small body crumpling onto the muddy ground. "Max!" Lily's scream cut through the chaos of police radios and barking dogs. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands hovering uncertainly over his suddenly still form. Amanda was there in an instant, nurse's instincts taking over as she pressed gentle fingers to the puppy's side. His heartbeat fluttered erratically beneath her touch, his breathing shallow and labored. Most alarming was the bluish tint to his gums, a sign of poor oxygenation that every medical professional recognized as dangerous. "We need to get him to Sarah's clinic now," she said, already gathering Max's limp body into her arms. The puppy felt impossibly light, as if the life force that had propelled him through the past 2 weeks was suddenly draining away. Sheriff Donovan cleared a path through the gathered officers and rescue workers. "Take my cruiser," he offered, pressing the keys into Walter's weathered hand. "It'll be faster than your truck in this mud." The drive to the veterinary clinic passed in a blur of rain-slicked roads and tense silence. In the back seat, Lily cradled Max's head in her lap, whispering a continuous stream of reassurance that broke Amanda's heart with each word. "You're going to be okay. Max, you did so good. You saved everybody. Please don't go away like Daddy did. Please stay with me." Walter drove with the focused intensity of a man who had navigated far worse conditions in wartime, his gnarled hands steady on the wheel despite the fear evident in his eyes whenever they caught Amanda's in the rearview mirror. "Seen this before," he muttered as they skidded around a corner. Harrison's operation used drugs to control the dogs, suppress aggression, increase compliance. Sometimes the effects don't show up right away. Amanda stroked Max's wet fur, feeling the tremors that now ran through his small frame. "You think he was drugged again? At Harrison's facility?" Walter's jaw tightened. "Or before? Insurance? Maybe. In case any of the dogs escaped and were found, make sure they wouldn't live to tell the tale, so to speak." The implications were too terrible to contemplate, especially with Lily listening. Amanda fell silent, focusing instead on monitoring Max's increasingly labored breathing as they finally pulled up to Dr. Bennett's clinic. Sarah was waiting at the door, alerted by Sheriff Donovan's call ahead. Her face revealed nothing as she took in Max's condition, but her movements carried the sharp efficiency of someone preparing for the worst. "Exam room 1, she directed, leading them through the empty waiting area. "Amanda, I'll need your help. Walter, keep Lily out here for now." "No," Lily's voice cracked with desperation. "I need to stay with him. He needs me." Sarah knelt to meet the child's eyes. "Lily, I promise I'll do everything I can for Max, but right now, I need space to work, and your mom can help me because she's a nurse." The best thing you can do for Max is let us help him." Lily's face crumpled, but she allowed Walter to guide her to a chair in the waiting room, her eyes never leaving Max as Amanda carried him into the examination room. Inside, Sarah worked with controlled urgency, attaching monitors, inserting an IV line, administering oxygen through a small mask. "His symptoms are consistent with thallium poisoning," she explained grimly. "It's sometimes used in rodenticides, but I've seen it used on dogs before, in my previous job." "Is there an antidote?" Amanda asked, holding Max steady as Sarah drew blood samples. "Prussian blue can help, but I don't stock it." Sarah's expression tightened with frustration. "The nearest supply would be at County General, but in this weather—" The implication hung in the air. The storm had intensified again, making the 30-mile drive to the county hospital nearly impossible on flooded rural roads. "What about activated charcoal?" Amanda suggested, grasping at the treatments she knew from human medicine. "Gastric lavage." Sarah nodded. "Already planning both, but if he was poisoned at Harrison's facility, it's been hours. Most of the toxin will already be absorbed." The next hours blurred together in a desperate race against an invisible enemy. Sarah and Amanda worked side by side, their movements synchronized by shared medical training and the common goal of saving one small life. Max received fluids, medication to support his heart function, charcoal to absorb any remaining toxins, and anti-seizure medication when tremors threatened to overtake his small body. Throughout it all, he remained unnaturally still, the vibrant, intelligent puppy, temporarily extinguished, leaving behind only the fragile shell of a young animal fighting for survival. In the waiting room, Walter maintained his stoic vigil beside Lily, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and slept fitfully with her head on his lap. Occasionally, Sarah would emerge with updates, each delivered in the carefully neutral tone of a doctor unwilling to offer either false hope or premature despair. "He's stabilized, but still critical. The seizures have stopped for now. His heart rate is improving slightly." As midnight approached, Amanda stepped into the waiting room, her scrub stained and her face drawn with fatigue. Walter looked up, not needing to voice the question in his eyes. "He's holding on," she said softly, careful not to wake Lily. "Sarah thinks he might have gotten a smaller dose than intended, or perhaps his recent improved health has given him more resistance." She sank into a chair across from them, the events of the day suddenly crashing down on her. "The next few hours will tell." Walter nodded, his weathered hand gently stroking Lily's hair. "This little one's been talking to him in her sleep," he said, a rough tenderness in his voice. "Telling him about her daddy, about how they used to have a dog named Buddy when she was little." Amanda's throat tightened. David had brought home a golden retriever puppy the day they'd brought Lily home from the hospital, insisting that every child needed a dog to grow up with. Buddy had died peacefully of old age just months before the accident that took David a double loss that had contributed to Lily's retreat from the world. "She hasn't talked about Buddy since David died," Amanda whispered. Walter's eyes held a knowing sadness. "Sometimes it takes one broken heart to help heal another." They fell into silence then, the only sounds the distant beeping of medical equipment and the steady drum of rain on the clinic roof. Amanda must have dozed off, because she startled awake to find Sarah standing over her, motioning her toward the back room. Max lay on a treatment table, still connected to monitors, but with his eyes open, those intelligent dark eyes that seemed to understand everything happening around him. His tail moved weakly as Amanda approached, a ghost of his usual greeting. "His blood work is still concerning," Sarah explained quietly. "But his vitals are stabilizing. I think we're past the worst of it. But—" she hesitated. "He's not out of the woods yet. There could be long-term neurological damage, kidney issues. We won't know for a while." Amanda stroked Max's head gently, feeling the soft warmth that had replaced the clammy chill of earlier. "He's a fighter," she said, echoing what everyone had observed about the remarkable puppy from the beginning. "Would it help if Lily came in?" Sarah asked. "Sometimes the connection between a child and their animal can do more than medicine." When Lily was brought in, still heavy-limbed with sleep, her reaction to seeing Max awake was immediate and transformative. Her tired face lit up, and she rushed to the table, careful not to disturb the IV lines and monitors. "Max," she whispered, pressing her forehead gently to his, "I knew you wouldn't leave me." What happened next would later be described by Sarah, a woman of science and skepticism, as remarkable. Max, who had barely managed to lift his head moments before, summoned the strength to raise himself just enough to lick Lily's cheek once before settling back, exhausted by the effort but visibly more alert. "Well, I'll be," Walter murmured from the doorway. "That's the darndest thing I've seen since Ranger found his way back to our unit after being lost behind enemy lines for 3 days. They established a rotation after that, Amanda and Walter taking turns monitoring Max through the night, while the other sat with Lily, who refused to leave the clinic. Sarah caught a few hours of sleep on her office couch between regular checks of Max's condition. As dawn broke, the storm finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a washed-clean world of puddles and debris. The first golden rays of morning sunlight streamed through the clinic windows, illuminating the small group gathered around a German shepherd puppy who, against all odds, had survived his second brush with death. "You saved my dog," Lily said suddenly, looking up at the adults with solemn eyes. "Just like I saved him from the lake." "We all saved him together," Amanda corrected gently. But Walter shook his head. "No, she's right," the old man said, his voice rough with emotion. "That first day when she jumped in the water after him without a thought for herself, that's what started it all. That's what gave him a chance." He looked down at Max, whose eyes had drifted closed again, this time in natural sleep rather than poisoned unconsciousness. Sometimes it just takes one person willing to dive in when everyone else would walk away. As Max slept, his chest rising and falling in the strengthening rhythm of a creature returning to life, Amanda realized that the tragedy they had narrowly averted had brought with it an unexpected gift. Her daughter's voice had returned, along with her courage and her capacity for love. In saving Max, Lily had somehow begun to save herself. The story broke in the Echo Lake Gazette 2 days later. Local businessmen arrested in dog trafficking ring. The front-page article detailed the rescue of 17 dogs from Harrison's property and mentioned the concerned citizens who had helped authorities uncover the operation. Sheriff Donovan had kept Lily's name out of the papers, for which Amanda was grateful. But the community knew nonetheless. The Hudson cabin received a steady stream of visitors bringing casseroles, dog treats, and quiet thanks. Max remained at the clinic under Dr. Bennett's watchful care, making slow but steady progress. The poison had taken its toll. He tired easily and occasionally suffered tremors in his hind legs, but his alert intelligence remained undimmed. Lily spent every possible moment at his side, reading to him from her father's old books, or simply sitting with her hand resting on his gradually filling out frame. It was during one of these visits, a week after the raid on Harrison's property, that their understanding of what had truly happened began to change. Sarah Bennett arrived for her morning rounds, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, dark circles beneath her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. "I need to talk to you," she said to Amanda, her voice low to avoid Lily's attention. "Privately." They stepped into Sarah's cramped office, where file folders and medical journals competed for space with coffee mugs and framed veterinary certificates. Sarah closed the door before turning to face Amanda, her professional composure visibly cracking. "I haven't been entirely honest with you," she began, her fingers nervously twisting a pen. "About my connection to all of this." Amanda felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "What do you mean?" Sarah sank into her desk chair. 5 years ago, I didn't just work at a research facility. I was the lead veterinarian for PharmaCorp's Animal Testing Division. She looked up, her eyes haunted. Thomas Harrison was one of our main suppliers. The revelation hung in the air between them. Amanda struggled to reconcile this information with the woman who had worked tirelessly to save Max. "I didn't know about the illegal breeding operations then," Sarah continued. "Not at first. We received animals through proper channels, with documentation that looked legitimate. But over time, I noticed irregularities, dogs with identical markings to ones we'd used months before, strange behavioral patterns consistent with previous trauma. You realize they were breeding dogs specifically for testing," Amanda said flatly. Sarah nodded. "When I raised concerns, my supervisors dismissed them. When I persisted, I was warned to drop it. When I gathered evidence and threatened to go public," she swallowed hard. "There was an accident at my apartment, a gas leak. They said I lost everything, my research, my documentation, nearly my life." "They tried to kill you," Amanda whispered, the pieces falling into place. "I can't prove it was them, but afterward, I relocated here, changed my professional focus, kept my head down." Sarah's laugh held no humor. "I thought I'd escape that world until I saw Max and recognized the markings." She met Amanda's eyes directly. "I should have told you everything immediately, but I was afraid, after what happened before." Amanda's nurse's training kicked in, helping her process this shocking information with clinical detachment. "Why tell me now?" "Because Harrison's arrest has opened a door I thought was permanently closed." Sarah pulled a file from her desk drawer. "Last night, I was contacted by someone from the State Attorney General's office. They've been building a case against PharmaCorp for years, illegal testing, falsified research data, environmental violations. Harrison's operation is just one piece of a much larger puzzle." The file contained photographs, emails, and medical records, copies of the evidence Sarah had salvaged before her accident. Most disturbing were images of facilities far larger than Harrison's, where dozens of dogs were kept in clinical conditions, clearly being used for testing purposes. "These aren't just from PharmaCorp," Sarah explained. "Harrison was supplying animals to at least 3 other research facilities across the state. The marking system on Max's ear, it's a cataloging method used to track which dogs go where." Amanda felt sick. How many animals are we talking about? Hundreds, maybe thousands over the years. Sarah's voice was flat with suppressed emotion. And it's not just dogs. Other species, too. A knock on the office door interrupted them. Walter stood in the doorway, his expression grave. "You might want to come see this," he said. "Someone's here." In the waiting room stood Sheriff Donovan, accompanied by a tall woman in a crisp pantsuit who introduced herself as Special Agent Diana Chen from the FBI's Environmental Crimes Unit. "We're here to speak with Dr. Bennett," Agent Chen explained, her gaze flickering toward the back rooms where Max and Lily were, "and to see the German Shepherd puppy that was recovered from Harrison's facility." Sarah stepped forward, visibly steeling herself. "I've been expecting you. I have the files ready." Agent Chen's expression softened slightly. "Dr. Bennett, we're not here to cause trouble for you. Quite the opposite. Your former colleagues at PharmaCorp have started talking. Seems Harrison's arrest spooked them considerably." "Talking about what?" Walter asked bluntly. "About a whistleblower who tried to expose their operation 5 years ago," Agent Chen replied, "and who narrowly survived a suspicious accident afterward." Sarah's face drained of color. "You know about that?" "We've known for some time, Dr. Bennett. What we lacked was concrete evidence tying Harrison to PharmaCorp's testing programs." Agent Chen's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine emotion. "Your courage in treating this puppy, despite the risk of exposure, helped us connect those final dots." The conversation that followed revealed the true scope of what they had stumbled upon. Harrison's Echo Lake operation was one of several supply chains providing animals to pharmaceutical research facilities across 3 states. The breeding program selected for specific traits: intelligence, physical characteristics, temperament depending on the type of testing required. "What about the dogs that were thrown in the lake?" Lily's small voice came from the hallway where she stood listening, one hand buried in Max's fur as he leaned against her leg for support. Agent Chen knelt to the child's level, her official manner gentling. "Some of the dogs didn't meet their requirements, or were too old to be useful to them anymore. Instead of proper euthanasia or rehoming, they just threw them away," Lily finished, her young face hardened with understanding beyond her years. "Yes," Agent Chen acknowledged, "but thanks to you and Max, that's not going to happen anymore." As the adults continued their discussion of evidence and upcoming legal proceedings, Lily led Max back to his recovery kennel, their matching limps, hers from fatigue, his from lingering weakness, creating an odd symmetry as they moved down the hallway. Later, when Amanda checked on them, she found her daughter sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Max's bed, speaking to him in low, serious tones. "And that's why you ran to Mr. Harrison's place," Lily was saying. "You remembered where the other dogs were. You were trying to help them all along." Max watched her with that peculiar, focused attention that had marked him from the beginning, his head tilted slightly as if considering her words. "You're a hero, Max," Lily continued, stroking his ear. "Just like Daddy was." Amanda's breath caught. It was the first time Lily had spoken of her father without pain overwhelming her voice. That evening, as they prepared to leave the clinic, Max would need to stay another night for observation. Walter pulled Amanda aside in the parking lot. "There's something else you should know," the old man said, his weathered face unusually hesitant. Something I ain't been entirely forthcoming about." Amanda waited, somehow unsurprised that more revelations were coming. "I didn't just happen to be watching Harrison's place these past months," Walter continued. "I've been documenting everything, comings and goings, vehicles, patterns. Got a whole shed full of notebooks, photographs, even some recordings." He looked away, embarrassed. "Folk thought I was just a crazy old vet with too much time on his hands. Suited me fine to let 'em think that." "Why didn't you tell us?" Amanda asked gently. Walter's shoulders slumped. "Tried going to the authorities when Ranger disappeared. Sheriff before Donovan fellow named Mercer told me I was imagining things, that Harrison was a pillar of the community." His voice hardened. "Later found out Mercer's son-in-law worked security for Harrison. Realized then I needed more than suspicions needed hard evidence." "And now you have it," Amanda said. "We all do." Walter's gaze drifted toward the clinic where Lily was saying her goodnight to Max. "Never figured it'd be a half-drowned pup and a slip of a girl that would finally bring it all down." The following morning brought another unexpected visitor to the clinic. Thomas Harrison's wife, Eleanor, arrived alone in a modest sedan rather than her usual luxury car. She was a slim, elegant woman in her 50s whose carefully maintained appearance did little to hide her obvious distress. Dr. Bennett initially refused to let her enter. But Eleanor Harrison wasn't there to cause trouble. "I came to apologize," she said simply, her composure cracking as she spoke. "And to give you this." This turned out to be a leather-bound ledger containing detailed records of Harrison's breeding operation dates, bloodlines, destinations, and most crucially, financial transactions linking the operation directly to PharmaCorp and 2 other research facilities. "I knew something wasn't right," Eleanor explained, her manicured hands trembling. "Thomas was always secretive about that part of the property. Wouldn't let me near the kennels. Said it was just business." Her face hardened. "I found this in his office safe after they took him away. I want you to have it." "Why?" Agent Chen asked bluntly, having been called to the clinic when Eleanor arrived. Eleanor's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the redness around her eyes. "Because my husband helped kill Dr. Bennett's dog 5 years ago," she said quietly. "And because I can't live with myself if I don't try to make this right." The revelation sent a shock wave through the small group. Sarah stared at Eleanor, speechless, as the other woman continued. "It wasn't just a gas leak. They tampered with your car. To the brakes. I overheard Thomas on the phone that night." Tears slipped down Eleanor's cheeks. "I told myself it was just talk, that he wouldn't really. But then your apartment exploded, and you left town, and I knew. I've been living with that knowledge ever since." In the stunned silence that followed, it was Walter who finally spoke. "Takes courage to come forward like this, ma'am, especially against your own husband." Eleanor looked at the old veteran with something like gratitude. "Not as much courage as it took to keep investigating when everyone told you to stop," she said. "Thomas used to rant about the crazy old man watching his property. He was afraid of you. Mr. Thornton, afraid you'd eventually find something." "Which he did," Amanda said quietly. With Max's help. At the sound of his name, Max appeared in the hallway doorway, Lily close behind. Eleanor's composure finally broke completely at the sight of the German Shepherd puppy. "Oh, God," she whispered. "He's one of the special ones. Isn't he? The ones with the triple marker." Sarah stepped forward sharply. "What do you know about the marking system?" Eleanor wiped her tears with a trembling hand. "The triple notch means enhanced intelligence breeding. They were trying to develop dogs with superior problem-solving abilities for specialized testing." She looked at Max with genuine grief. "They said this litter was too smart, too independent, would never follow protocols properly. So they decided to eliminate them," Agent Chen concluded grimly. Eleanor nodded. The lake was their disposal method for years. Quick, convenient. Rarely any evidence left behind. She couldn't meet Lily's eyes as she spoke. "I'm so sorry." The third and final revelation came that afternoon, when Agent Chen returned from interviewing Eleanor Harrison at the FBI field office. She brought with her a file containing photographs of another facility, one much larger than Harrison's operation. "We've identified the primary breeding center," she explained, spreading the images across Dr. Bennett's desk. "It's on private land about 60 miles north of here. Registered to a shell company we've now linked to PharmaCorp's chief research officer." The photographs showed a compound of industrial buildings surrounded by high fences, with outdoor training areas and what appeared to be specialized kennels. "How many dogs?" Sarah asked quietly. "Initial estimates suggest at least 70 currently on site," Agent Chen replied, "and based on the records Mrs. Harrison provided, potentially hundreds more that have already been sent to research facilities." Walter studied the images with a veteran's tactical eye. "When do you move in?" "Dawn tomorrow. Multiple agencies. Simultaneous raids on this facility and 2 research locations." Agent Chen's expression was grimly satisfied. Harrison's operation was just the tip of the iceberg. What we're about to dismantle is one of the largest illegal animal testing networks in the country. As the adults discussed logistics and legal implications, Lily sat quietly with Max, who had been deemed well enough to go home the following day. The puppy rested his head on her lap, his dark eyes moving between the faces of the humans around him, as if understanding that the world that had nearly destroyed him was finally crumbling. "You did it, Max," Lily whispered, bending close to his ear. "You saved them all." 1 year later, Echo Lake sparkled under a perfect June sky, its surface rippled only by a gentle breeze and the occasional leap of a fish. The Hudson cabin had undergone a transformation: fresh paint, repaired dock, flower boxes blooming beneath windows that now opened more often than not. Most notable was the large fenced yard that extended from the back porch to the edge of the woods, complete with obstacles, ramps, and tunnels that composed what Walter called the most overbuilt dog playground in 3 counties. Inside, Lily Hudson sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by colorful paper and markers, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration as she carefully wrote "Grand Opening" across a homemade banner. At 8 years old, she had grown taller over the past year, her freckles more pronounced from days spent outdoors. The haunted look that had once shadowed her eyes had given way to something steadier, more confident. "How's it coming, sweetheart?" Amanda asked, setting a glass of lemonade beside her daughter. "Almost done." Lily held up the banner for inspection. "Do you think we need more decorations?" Amanda smiled, taking in the dozens of paw prints Lily had drawn around the border. "I think it's perfect. The whole town will love it." The whole town had indeed RSVP'd to the afternoon's event, the official opening of the Echo Lake Animal Sanctuary, established on the former Harrison property after its seizure by federal authorities. The transformation of the estate from a site of cruelty to a haven for rehabilitation had been Echo Lake's most ambitious community project in decades. A familiar jingling of tags announced Max's arrival in the kitchen. The German Shepherd was barely recognizable as the half-drowned puppy pulled from the lake a year before. Now fully grown at 70 pounds of sleek muscle and glossy coat, he moved with the dignified confidence of a dog who knew his place in the world. The only visible reminders of his ordeal were a slight limp in his right hind leg that emerged when he was tired, and the notches in his ear that had once marked him for disposal. "There's my good boy," Lily greeted him, receiving a gentle nudge of his nose against her cheek in response. The bond between them had only deepened with time, evolving into something the child psychologist Amanda had eventually consulted called mutually healing attachment. The back door opened with a familiar creak, admitting Walter. At 69, the Vietnam veteran moved a bit more slowly these days, but his eyes remained sharp beneath his ever-present fishing hat. He carried a wooden sign under one arm. The words, "Second chances start here," carved into the cedar and carefully painted. "Got the entrance sign finished," he announced, setting it carefully against the wall. "Jeff Williams is bringing his truck around to help transport everything to the sanctuary." Walter had become a fixture in their lives, a self-appointed grandfather figure to Lily and resident handyman for the cabin. His own place down the shore now stood empty most days, as he spent his time either with the Hudsons or at the sanctuary, where his expertise with working dogs had proven invaluable during the rehabilitation process. The months following Harrison's arrest had brought dramatic changes to Echo Lake. The raid on the northern breeding facility had rescued 73 dogs and uncovered documentation that eventually led to indictments against executives at PharmaCorp and 2 other research companies. Thomas Harrison himself had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony against his corporate partners, resulting in a 15-year sentence for animal cruelty, illegal trafficking, and thanks to Eleanor Harrison's testimony, attempted murder in the case of Sarah Bennett's accident. The legal proceedings had drawn national attention, bringing animal rights activists, journalists, and eventually donors to the small lakeside community. When the question arose of what to do with Harrison's seized property, it was Lily who had first suggested turning it into a sanctuary for the rescued animals. "Not just for dogs," she had explained earnestly during a community meeting. "For any animal that needs help, like Max helped us." The idea had taken root, gaining support from unexpected quarters. Eleanor Harrison, who had filed for divorce immediately after her husband's arrest, donated her portion of their assets to the project. Dr. Bennett offered her professional services at reduced rates. Even Sheriff Donovan contributed, organizing volunteer security patrols to ensure the sanctuary remained protected. Today's grand opening represented the culmination of these efforts, the former site of suffering transformed into a place of healing, with the first 20 rehabilitated dogs ready for adoption by carefully screened families. The sanctuary itself was unrecognizable from its previous incarnation. The forbidding concrete building had been partially demolished, its materials repurposed into open-air kennel structures designed for comfort rather than confinement. The surrounding grounds, once sterile and utilitarian, now featured natural play areas, shade trees, and a small pond where dogs could safely splash under supervision. As they arrived at the sanctuary with their decorations and refreshments, Amanda felt a surge of pride at what their community had accomplished. Volunteers bustled about, making final preparations, setting up chairs, arranging adoption information packets, preparing name tags for the dogs who would be the day's guests of honor. Sarah Bennett greeted them at the entrance, her professional demeanor softened by genuine warmth. The past year had seen her emerge from hiding, her testimony instrumental in bringing down not just Harrison, but the larger network he had served. The quiet veterinarian had discovered an unexpected talent for advocacy, becoming a respected voice in animal welfare circles. "Everything's ready," she reported, kneeling to greet Max with the respectful affection she always showed him. "The local news crew is setting up by the main building, and the mayor's already practicing her speech." Lily clutched the banner to her chest, suddenly shy in the face of the bustling activity. "Do you think people will come, really come?" "Oh, honey," Sarah smiled. "They're already lining up at the gate." Indeed. A steady stream of cars was making its way up the long driveway, filled with families eager to support the sanctuary, and perhaps find a new four-legged member to take home. Among them were familiar faces, the Williams family, including Cassie, now 10, who had become Lily's closest friend, Mrs. Davis from next door, whose security camera footage had helped build the case against Harrison, Jeff Miller, whose golden retriever had been among those rescued from the northern facility. The ceremony itself was simple but moving. Mayor Collins, who had once dismissed concerns about missing pets, now spoke passionately about community responsibility and second chances. Sheriff Donovan unveiled a memorial plaque honoring the animals who hadn't survived Harrison's operation. Dr. Bennett explained the sanctuary's mission and rehabilitation programs. When it came time for the final remarks, all eyes turned expectantly to Amanda, who had reluctantly accepted the role of sanctuary director after months of gentle pressure from the community. "I'm not one for speeches," she began, standing beneath the shade of an oak tree with Max and Lily at her side. "A year ago, my daughter and I were newcomers here, just trying to put our lives back together after losing my husband, David." She paused, gathering herself. "We came to Echo Lake looking for peace, not purpose. We certainly never expected to find ourselves in the middle of uncovering what we uncovered." A murmur of understanding rippled through the gathered crowd. "But sometimes," Amanda continued, "life sends you exactly what you need, even if it comes in unexpected packages." She glanced down at Max, who sat at perfect attention beside Lily, his intelligent eyes fixed on her face. "A half-drowned puppy turned out to be the catalyst that not only helped my daughter find her voice again, but helped this entire community find its conscience." She gestured toward the sanctuary buildings behind her. "What stands here today isn't just a refuge for animals. It's a monument to what happens when people refuse to look away from suffering, when they choose to dive into cold water, to ask uncomfortable questions, to stand up against powerful interests doing wrong." As she spoke, Lily reached down to stroke Max's head, a gesture that had become second nature. The German shepherd leaned slightly against the child's leg, the subtle support he always offered when emotions ran high. Echo Lake Animal Sanctuary exists because an 8-year-old girl believed a dog's life was worth saving, Amanda concluded, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. "And in saving him, She taught all of us that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come from the smallest hearts. The applause that followed was punctuated by a few discreet tears and many nodding heads. As the formal ceremony concluded and people began moving toward the kennels to meet the adoptable dogs, Walter appeared at Amanda's side. "Fine words," he said simply, his weathered face revealing more emotion than he typically allowed. David would have been mighty proud of both his girls today. Amanda felt Lily slip her small hand into hers, squeezing gently. "I think he would have liked what we've built here," she replied. "I know Daddy would have loved Max." Lily added with the certainty of a child who had found peace with her loss, "He always said dogs know things people don't," as if confirming this wisdom. Max suddenly perked up, his attention drawn to a family approaching hesitantly from the parking area, a tired-looking woman and two small children, clearly uncertain if they belonged at such an event. Without prompting, Max walked toward them, his manner gentle and welcoming as he stopped a respectful distance away, tail wagging in invitation. "He's choosing them," Lily whispered with quiet certainty. Walter nodded, understanding immediately. "For Ranger, I expect. That family needs him." The sanctuary's first day ended with 17 successful adoptions, including a gentle older German shepherd named Ranger, who went home with the family Max had greeted. As sunset painted Echo Lake in shades of gold and pink, the Hudsons and Walter sat on their rebuilt dock, watching the water that had once concealed so much darkness now reflect the peaceful evening sky. Max lay between Lily and Walter, his head resting on his paws as he gazed out at the lake that had nearly claimed his life. There was no fear in his posture now, no trembling at the sound of water lapping against the shore. Like the humans beside him, he had transformed his trauma into purpose, his pain into healing. "You know," Walter said after a long, comfortable silence, "in all my years, I never would have believed a story that started with someone throwing a puppy in a lake could end up changing so many lives for the better." Lily leaned against the old man's shoulder, her face thoughtful in the fading light. "That's because most stories don't tell you what happens after the rescue," she said with the simple wisdom of a child who had learned life's hardest lessons too young. "But that's the most important part." As darkness settled over Echo Lake, bringing with it the chorus of night creatures and the first glimmer of stars, Amanda watched her daughter and the remarkable dog who had saved each other in ways that defied simple explanation. Some might call it coincidence that Max had washed up on their shore that morning a year ago. Others might attribute it to fate or divine intervention. But Amanda preferred Lily's explanation, offered months ago, as they'd watched Max take his first strong, confident steps after recovery. "Sometimes," the child had said, "the things that try to drown us are the same things that teach us we can swim." Sometimes life's most profound lessons come from unexpected places, like a half-drowned German shepherd puppy fighting for his life at the edge of a lake. As we grow older, we understand that second chances aren't just for the young. They're for those of us who've weathered storms and still have the courage to begin again. Max's story reminds us that even when we feel abandoned, our worth isn't diminished. Even when our bodies bear the scars of our journeys, a limp that appears when we're tired, or memories that still make us tremble, we remain capable of extraordinary courage. Perhaps you, like Walter, have wisdom earned through hardship that seems unwanted in a world moving too quickly. Or maybe, like Amanda. You've experienced loss that left you simply going through the motions of living. Echo Lake's transformation teaches us that our communities still need us, that purpose often finds us when we've stopped looking for it, and that healing happens when we reach beyond our own pain to help another. Remember, the most beautiful sanctuaries are often built on the foundations of what once brought suffering. Your story isn't finished yet, and like Max, your greatest contributions may still lie ahead.